First Minister, I wonder if I could ask you more broadly about the ideology here in terms of gender, because I'm genuinely struggling to understand the ideology. So you have argued for some years in favour of self-identification as enshrined in the legislation that went through Parliament. The idea that if you want to change your gender, all you need to do is declare that you're changing your gender. But you've also suggested that you don't accept Isla Bryson's position in changing gender, that you effectively think Isla Bryson is at it. So my question is, how do you square those two things? Because what is the barrier and who decides? Is it a rape conviction? Is it a sexual assault conviction? Is it a theft conviction? Is it up to the First Minister to decide individually whether you believe one individual or another? I don't understand the ideology, and I wonder if you can explain it to us.
Well, first of all, James, for me, it's not about ideology. It's about the rights of a minority in our society who already struggle with stigma and discrimination, and in terms of the process that's currently in place for somebody legally changing their gender, many who go through that process find it degrading and traumatic and overly bureaucratic. So it's not an ideology, it is about rights, and I think that is the important starting point. Secondly, yes, the legislation is described as self-ID, but it is not true to say, and you can look at the legislation, that all you need to do is declare. There is a statutory process in place, and the rules and procedures of that are laid down in the legislation that was scrutinised rigorously by Parliament and passed by a 2/3 majority. The point and I made this point to Glenn as well, is that within any group in society, there will be individuals, and I'm not commenting on a particular case here. In fact, what I said in Parliament first and foremost is that I don't know enough about individual cases to make the kind of judgments that you're speaking about. I was reflecting on what I think many people might think in that particular case. But in any group in society, there will be individuals who do wrong, who commit crimes, who abuse the rights that entire group enjoy. Now, my point is that will be the case in every group in society, but there is no other group in society where we accept that the actions of an individual or a very small minority of individuals somehow forms a justification for taking away rights from the whole group or not according rights to that whole group that make their life easier and less traumatic. These are complexities that will arise in every walk of life, and I believe in a mature democracy like Scotland is, we are perfectly capable of navigating our way through these issues. And the important principle, I wouldn't use the word ideology, but the important principle here is that where in any group an individual commits an offence or behaves inappropriately or wrongly, you deal with that individual. And in this case, the individual is a rapist. That's the important description for this individual. They have been convicted of rape and they are in prison, and in a male prison. So you deal with the individual. You don't further stigmatise the entire group.
I totally understand that, but do you understand why some people are struggling with it? That basically the core of this matter is Isla Bryson a woman or not? And if Isla Bryson's not a woman, who makes that decision and on what basis?
The important question here for me, and I said this in Parliament, is actually not that one. It is the crime that the individual has been convicted of.
It's
so,
an important question for
no, sure, but
listening and watching this and concerned about the impact of self-identification.
It is what flows from that. So, in a prison context, even if you take the view, and I'm just trying to sort of go along with your questioning here, if you take the view that an individual of this description is a woman, in a prison context, that does not give that individual the right automatically to be accommodated in a female prison. If that was the case, then yes, I accept that would be the most important question, but that's not the case. So this individual is in a male prison because of the nature of the crime and presumably the nature of the risk that perhaps is presented by that. Similarly, when that individual leaves prison, although I would suspect that may be some time, that there will be arrangements in place to monitor that individual, as there are arrangements in place to monitor sex offenders when they leave prison. So the important fact in this case is the crime that was committed. And the individual, regardless of gender, should be treated in a way appropriate to the crime that was committed and the nature of any risk that that individual is considered to pose. That's the important thing. And yes, I do understand that people perhaps struggle with some of this, but that's why it is all the more important, in my view, that we deal rationally with these situations, where we deal with, in a prison context, the nature of the crime and the degree of risk posed, as has happened in this case, and that when we're dealing with individuals who do wrong, we focus on the individual. We don't stigmatise or remove rights from the entirety of a group, the overwhelming majority of whom, in the case of the trans community, as with the general population, never commit any crime. They simply want to live their lives with dignity and free of the trauma that often is associated with how they choose to live their lives.